right, so this is the final video in this navigation series, but that doesn't mean that's the final navigation video. We're going to continue on and do some navigation videos with some other tools and other techniques down the road. But we're going to close this last class up with how do you deal with getting lost. This is bound to happen to anybody that spends any time in the wilderness. And this is the reason why we have maps and compasses. Oftentimes, as best of a map and compass skills that you have, you still might find a situation where you get turned around, as Davy Crockett used to call it, bewildered. We've lost your bearings, and that's okay. You know, I think a lot of times people really beat themselves down by getting lost, and particularly you hear a lot of stories of hunters that go out. They assume they know a lot more about the woods than they do, or they don't just practice their skills, so they're pretty rusty on their map and compass skills, or maybe they don't have map and compass skills. And the reason why a lot of people stay lost, and they find this to be pretty common for hunters, is shame. So when they hear a search party looking for them, they run the opposite way, trying to find their own way out by themselves to save face. So first and foremost, just you need to understand that it's going to happen. It's bound to happen to you, and it can happen to you. When this happens, you need to really relax. Don't panic. If you panic, what happens is your mind starts to shut down, and or it panics and it goes overboard and you start overthinking things and you're not thinking clearly. So my suggestion is always to stop. And you can always remember this acronym by stop what you're doing, stop moving, just don't move any further, pull out your map, pull out your compass, take a minute and start thinking about where you are going to be. Start using your terrain association. Start looking around and trying to familiar yourself with the location that you're at. So you're going to start observing. So you're going to stop. You're going to start thinking. You're going to start observing. And after you've taken a deep breath, you're going to start putting together a plan. Stop. Stop and think. Stop and observe. And then stop and plan. But you want to stop. Too many people just keep moving, thinking that, oh, it's just around the corner, or oh, there's something. What you want to do is you want to basically start thinking about your location, where you're at, associating yourself with your terrain, and then start coming up with a plan on where to go. Now, if you can't locate yourself on the terrain that you're in, then you might need to strategically move in a direction that is going to give you a better viewpoint or location, or viewpoint, so where you can help start relocating yourself or figuring out where you're at. Start thinking about how much time you've moved, how much space you've traveled, estimating, and that's going to give you, a circle of a distance of which you've potentially have traveled. Think about the things that you've seen behind you, things that you've passed. All right. One thing that you can do to help kind of keep yourself from being turned around is recording on your map the different places that you have been and times in which you've been there. And that gives you this record then to kind of go back and say, okay, well, I was at this location at this time, so I've covered this amount of terrain, therefore I'm in this kind of general circle. You can always take pictures with your cell phone, and a lot of times what people can do is, especially on smaller, shorter trails, is taking pictures of what's behind you. So that way, if you're going out the same way you came in, nothing looks familiar looking forward, but it's going to look familiar when you're reviewing your phone and looking back. But the idea here is you want to stay awake and aware of your surroundings as you're navigating through, in terms of how much time, features, where you're at on your map. And you're checking every 15 minutes at least of where you're at. And that's going to help you avoid getting lost in the first place. All right, now let's say if you've determined that you can't find your location, therefore you can't find your route, or maybe you have. You do need to consider the time of day that it's at. Is it going to be safer for you to continue to travel to get to where you need to go? Is weather going to be a factor in moving from one location to the other location? First aid, is anyone hurt? Is the reason why you're turned around or in a survival situation because someone is hurt? How are you being affected by dehydration? Are you drinking water? Do you have accessibility to water? And what's your overall energy level? Are you going to be able to physically make it out to the trailhead that you think you are in order to get across, like, say, if you had to go cross country? All of these things are going to come into your plan when you have stopped, you start thinking, you start observing, looking at your phone, looking at your map, considering the amount of time that you've covered since your last known location, and you're going to start using that to deduce your location down using all the skills that we had talked about here. And so if you have the ability to do all of the skills we've talked about with and without the compass, you're going to be much more suited to dealing with problems than you are with learning just those basic skills of dead reckoning or some of these other very, very specific navigation skills that other people teach. If you follow this movie series, video series from beginning to end, you're going to be able to take those skill sets and use the map by itself, the compass by itself, or if you can't get your compass, or you don't have a compass for whatever reason, you're going to rely on cardinal directions, say making a sun stick to figure out which way you need to go, and all of these other kind of survival techniques. Then you're going to be much better situated in order to make and have the skill sets to know what you're doing. If you need to send out a party because one person is sick or hurt, you know how to find your location on your map, find your coordinates, send those coordinates out, put somebody on a route plan to where they need to go to get help, to get to the road, using handrails, baselines, backstops, all those things that we've talked about. When you are in an emergency situation, that's when all of these skills basically start coming together and becoming very, very important. But you can't expect to have all these skills right away. You have to be able to get out and practice. So I suggest don't let your tools and your maps keep you from practicing these skills. Use basic skills. This whole series, we've used a basic compass. We've talked about ways in which you can get around not having to purchase extra things. We're not talking about purchasing using a $300 or more GPS. We're talking a 7.5 minute map that you can buy off a line for $10, or a GPS or a Google Maps that you can print off. We're talking about a $10 or $15 compass and a pencil. And you can navigate through anything and everything. So with that, I want to thank you for participating in this series. I really want to thank you for comments and interaction. If you do have any comments, or if you'd like me to go back and describe a video better or redo a video, please do not hesitate to ask me to do that. If you want to contact me and have a conversation, Or if you might be interested in doing a live training session, I can do that. Just contact me on Instagram. That's the best way to do it. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions or explore some potential future video options as well. So like I said, this is the end of this series, but it's not going to be the end of the topic and conversation we'll have about navigation. So with that, thank you very much, and I appreciate your time, and we'll see you soon.